Orphan girl was sold for a coin until the buyer recognized the scar. The sun hung low and angry over the trading post, casting long shadows across the dirt where men gathered like vultures. It was a kind of heat that made the air shimmer and the throat close, the kind that turned patience into cruelty. Dust rose in slow clouds with every step, settling on hats and boots and the tired faces of those who had come to buy and sell what the world had deemed worthless. The girl stood on a wooden platform that had once been used for feed sacks and crates of whiskey. Now it held her. She was small, maybe 9 or 10 years old, though hunger and hardship had made her look younger. Her dress was torn at the hem and stained with the kind of dirt that never washes out. Her hair hung in tangled dark strands around a face that had forgotten how to cry. She did not look at the crowd. She looked at the ground, at her bare feet, at the splinters in the wood beneath her. The auctioneer was a fat man with a voice like gravel scraping iron. He stood beside her with one hand on her shoulder, holding her in place as if she might run. But she would not run. There was nowhere left to go. "Step right up, gentlemen," the auctioneer called, his voice carrying over the low murmur of the crowd. "Got ourselves a strong little worker here. Orphan girl, no family, no claims. Good hands for washing, cooking, mending. Won't cost you much to feed her neither." The men shifted where they stood. Some leaned against hitching posts. Others spat tobacco into the dust. A rancher in a wide-brimmed hat crossed his arms and squinted at the girl like she was a horse he might buy if the price was right. A shopkeeper with a clean shirt and nervous hands glanced toward his wife, who shook her head and turned away. "Let's start the bidding at $2, the auctioneer said. $2. The price of a bottle of good whiskey. The price of a new pair of gloves. A man near the back raised his hand. $2. The girl did not move. She did not blink. Her hands hung at her sides, small and pale and still. $2.50, came another voice, this one from a cowboy with a scar across his cheek and eyes that held no warmth. The auctioneer grinned. "There we go. $2.50. Do I hear 3? Silence. The crowd watched without feeling. This was business. This was survival. The West had a way of turning people into stone. $2.50 going once. $3. The voice came from the edge of the crowd, quiet but firm. Heads turned. A man stepped forward, and the dust seemed to move with him. He was tall and lean, with a face carved by wind and sun and too many nights under open skies. His clothes were worn but clean. His hat was pulled low, shadowing eyes that had seen too much and forgotten too little. A drifter, by the look of him. A man without roots. The auctioneer looked him over and nodded. $3 from the stranger. Do I hear 4? The rancher shook his head and walked away. The cowboy with the scar studied the drifter for a long moment, then shrugged and stepped back. No one else spoke. $3 was more than most were willing to spend on a child who might not last the winter. $3 going once, going twice. The auctioneer paused, scanning the crowd one last time. Sold. To the man in the gray hat. The girl still did not look up. The drifter moved through the crowd slowly, his boots crunching in the gravel. He reached the platform and held out 3 silver coins. The auctioneer snatched them up and counted them twice before nodding. "She's yours," the fat man said, as if she were a sack of grain. "Good luck with her. Don't talk much, this one." The drifter did not answer. He looked at the girl for the first time, really looked at her, and something in his chest tightened like a rope around a breaking branch. She was so small, so still. He reached out a hand, not to grab her, but to help her down from the platform. That was when he saw it. Her wrist. A scar, pale and crescent-shaped, curving just below her left hand. It was old, healed long ago, but unmistakable. The kind of scar that came from fire, from metal, from pain that did not fade. His hand froze in the air. His breath caught. The world around him seemed to blur and bend, the voices of the crowd falling away into silence. He knew that scar. He had seen it before years ago, in another life, in a place that no longer existed except in nightmares and guilt. The girl looked up at him then for just a moment, Her eyes were dark and empty, like wells that had run dry. She did not recognize him. Why would she? She had been too young, too hurt, too broken by what had happened. But he recognized her. His throat tightened. His heart pounded against his ribs like a prisoner trying to escape. He forced himself to breathe, to move, to finish what he had started. He took her hand, carefully, gently, as if she might shatter, and helped her down from a platform. Her skin was cold despite the heat. "Come on," he said quietly, his voice rough and unsteady. "Let's go." She followed him without a word, her bare feet moving through the dust as if she had no will of her own. He led her to his horse, a gray mare tied to a post near the edge of the trading post. He lifted the girl onto the saddle, and she sat there like a ghost, staring at nothing. The drifter stood beside the horse for a long moment, one hand on the reins, the other pressed against his chest where his heart still hammered. He could not speak. He could not think. All he could do was stare at that scar on her wrist and remember the night it was made, the night the fire came, the night he ran, the night he left her behind. He climbed onto the horse behind her and took the reins. The crowd had already moved on, already forgotten the girl who had been sold for 3 silver coins. The auctioneer was calling out prices for a wagon wheel. The rancher was shaking hands with a merchant. Life continued, indifferent and cold. But for the drifter, everything had stopped. He nudged the horse forward, and they rode away from the trading post in silence, the girl stiff and small in front of him, the desert stretching out before them like a sentence with no end. He did not know what he would say to her. He did not know if she would believe him. He did not even know if he deserved to speak at all. But he knew one thing. He had found her. And this time, he would not let her go. They rode for hours without speaking. The desert stretched out around them like an ocean of dust and stone, endless and unforgiving. The sun climbed higher, turning the air thick and heavy. The only sounds were the steady rhythm of the horse's hooves and the creak of leather beneath them. The girl sat in front of him, her back straight and stiff, her hands gripping the saddle horn. She did not lean against him. She did not relax. She held herself like something fragile that had learned not to break, because breaking meant the end. The drifter kept his eyes on the horizon, but his mind was somewhere else, somewhere darker, a place filled with smoke and screaming and the smell of burning wood. He could still see it when he closed his eyes, the cabin engulfed in flames, the shadows moving through the firelight, the sound of his mother's voice calling out before it was silenced forever. And he could see the girl, smaller then, barely 5 years old, her face streaked with soot and tears as rough hands dragged her away into the night. He had hidden in the tall grass beyond the fence, too afraid to move, too broken to fight. He had watched them take her, and then he had run. He swallowed hard and forced the memory down. It did no good to think about it now. What was done was done. But the scar on her wrist was proof that the past never truly died. It just waited. By midday, they reached a small creek that wound through the rocks like a snake seeking shade. The water was shallow but clear, and the horse drank gratefully. The drifter dismounted and helped the girl down. She landed lightly on her feet and immediately stepped away from him, putting distance between them. He did not move closer. He understood fear. He had worn it himself for too long. "You should drink," he said quietly, nodding toward the creek. She looked at the water, then back at him. Her expression was unreadable. After a long moment, she knelt by the creek and cupped her hands, bringing the water to her lips. She drank slowly, carefully, as if even this small kindness might be taken away. The drifter pulled a cloth sack from his saddlebag and unwrapped a piece of dried bread and some jerky. He held it out to her. "Here," he said. "You need to eat." She stared at the food, but did not take it. Her eyes were dark and wary, the eyes of someone who had learned not to trust strangers. Or anyone. "It's not poisoned," he said, his voice softer now. "I promise." Still, she did not move. He set the food on a flat rock near the water and stepped back, giving her space. Then he sat down on the ground with his back against a boulder, his hat pulled low over his face. He did not watch her. He gave her the dignity of privacy, even though he wanted to know if she would eat. Minutes passed. The wind stirred the dust. A hawk circled overhead, its shadow moving across the desert floor. Finally, he heard the soft sound of movement. He glanced up from beneath the brim of his hat and saw her take the bread. She ate quickly, quietly, her eyes never leaving him. When she finished, she wiped her hands on her dress and sat down near the creek, her knees pulled up to her chest. She watched him the way a wolf watches a campfire, afraid, but unable to look away. The drifter took a slow breath and removed his hat, setting it on the ground beside him. His hair was dark and streaked with gray at the temples. His face was lined with years and guilt. He looked older than he was. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said. She said nothing. "I know you don't believe that," he continued. "I know you've got no reason to trust me. But I need you to hear me. Just hear me." The girl tilted her head slightly, like a bird listening for danger. But she did not run. The drifter leaned forward, resting his arms on his knees. "That scar on your wrist," he said, his voice rough and low. "I know where it came from." Her hand moved instinctively to her wrist, covering the crescent-shaped mark. Her eyes narrowed. "You got that scar the night our home burned down," he said. "You were trying to grab the skillet off the stove. Mama told you not to, but you were scared, and you reached for it anyway. The handle was hot. It burned you." The girl's breath hitched. Her hand trembled against her wrist. "You don't remember me," he said, and his voice cracked just a little. "You were too young. But I remember you. I remember everything." She stared at him now, her eyes wide and unblinking. Something flickered behind them, confusion, fear, and something else. Recognition, maybe, or the ghost of it. "My name is Caleb," he said. "Caleb Harper. And you're Emma. Emma Harper. You're my sister." The words hung in the air between them like smoke. The girl, Emma, opened her mouth as if to speak, but no sound came out. She shook her head slowly, as if trying to push the words away, to deny them. "I know it's hard to believe," Caleb said. "I know you don't remember me. But it's the truth. I'm your brother, and I've been looking for you for a long time." Emma's eyes filled with tears, but she did not let them fall. She pressed her lips together and looked away, staring at the creek as if it might give her answers. Caleb felt his chest tighten. He wanted to reach for her, to hold her, to tell her that everything would be all right. But he knew it would be a lie. Nothing was all right. Nothing had been all right since the night he failed her. "I should have saved you," he said, his voice barely more than a whisper. "I should have fought for you. But I didn't. I ran. I was a coward, Emma. And I've hated myself for it every day since." The wind picked up, carrying dust and the scent of dry grass. The horse shifted and snorted softly. The sun continued its slow descent toward the western hills. Emma finally looked at him again. Her face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed but dry. She studied him as if trying to find something familiar in the lines of his face, in the shape of his jaw, in the color of his eyes. And then, slowly, she lifted her hand and touched her wrist again. The scar. The crescent moon. Caleb nodded. "You remember," he said quietly. "Don't you?" She did not answer, but the way she looked at him changed. The fear was still there, but so was something else. A crack in the wall she had built around herself. He did not push. He simply sat there, waiting, letting her decide what came next. After a long silence, Emma stood. She walked to the edge of the creek and stared into the water, her reflection rippling in the current. Caleb watched her, his heart heavy with hope and dread. "I won't make you stay with me," he said. "If you want to go, I'll take you to a town, find you a place. I won't force you to be near me. But I had to tell you the truth. I had to let you know you're not alone. Not anymore." Emma turned to face him then, her small frame silhouetted against the fading light. She did not speak, but she did not run either. And for the first time in years, Caleb felt something he thought he had lost forever. He felt the faint, fragile stirring of forgiveness. They made camp as the sun disappeared behind the distant mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple and blood. Caleb gathered dry brush and built a small fire, while Emma sat on a flat rock nearby, watching him with eyes that had learned to see danger in every shadow. The flames caught slowly, crackling and spitting sparks into the cooling air. The fire was small, just enough to cook a little food and keep the night's chill at bay. Caleb did not want to draw attention. Out here, in the open desert, a large fire could be seen for miles. And there were men in these lands, outlaws, drifters worse than him, men who would kill for a horse or a gun or nothing at all. He heated beans in a dented tin pot and offered Emma a plate. She took it this time without hesitation, eating slowly, her eyes never leaving the fire. The light danced across her face, illuminating the dirt streaks, the hollowness in her cheeks, the weariness that no child should carry. Caleb ate little. His stomach was tight with nerves and guilt. He had been carrying the weight of his confession all day, knowing he had to speak it, dreading the moment when he would. Above them, the stars began to appear one by one, until the sky was filled with them. The desert night was quiet except for the fire's whisper and the distant howl of a coyote somewhere in the darkness. Caleb set his plate aside and stared into the flames. He had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in his mind, but now that it was here, the words felt impossible. "Emma," he said softly. She looked up at him, her expression guarded but curious. "There's more I need to tell you," he continued. "About that night. About what happened to our family." Emma set her plate down. She pulled her knees to her chest and wrapped her arms around them, making herself small. But she did not look away. Caleb took a deep breath and began. "We lived on a small ranch," he said. "Nothing fancy. Just a cabin, some land, a few cattle. Pa died when you were a baby. Fever took him. After that, it was just the three of us, you, me, and Mama. She worked hard. Too hard. But she never complained. She wanted to give us a good life." Emma's eyes softened slightly, as if she was reaching for a memory that was just out of reach. "You were 5 years old that night," Caleb said. "I was 14. Almost a man, or so I thought. Mama had put you to bed early because you'd been sick with a cough. I was outside mending a fence post when I saw them coming." His voice grew quieter, heavier. "Bandits," he said. 4 of them. Riding hard across the plain. I knew what they were the moment I saw them. You could tell by the way they moved, by the look in their eyes. They weren't travelers. They were hunters." Emma's fingers tightened around her knees. "I ran inside to warn Mama," Caleb continued. "But they were faster than I thought. By the time I got to the door, they were already there. One of them kicked it open. Mama grabbed the rifle from above the mantel, but she wasn't fast enough. They took it from her. They laughed." His jaw clenched. His hands curled into fists. "They wanted food, money, whatever we had. But we didn't have much. That made them angry. One of them, a man with a black beard and a scar across his nose, he grabbed Mama by the hair. He said if we didn't have money, they'd take something else." Emma's breath hitched. A tear slipped down her cheek, catching the firelight. "You woke up," Caleb said, his voice breaking. "You came out of the bedroom, rubbing your eyes, asking what was happening. Mama told you to go back, to hide, but you were scared. You ran to her. That's when you grabbed the skillet off the stove." He pointed to her wrist, to the crescent-shaped scar that had haunted him for years. "You were trying to protect her," he said. "You were just a little girl, but you were brave. Braver than I was. The skillet was hot. It burned you. You screamed. And that's when everything fell apart. The fire crackled. The wind stirred the dust around them. One of the bandits knocked over a lantern," Caleb said. The oil spilled across the floor. The flames spread fast. The whole cabin caught fire in minutes. There was smoke everywhere. I couldn't see. I couldn't breathe. Mama was shouting, trying to get to you, but they held her back. And then they took you." His voice shattered. "They dragged you outside, screaming and crying, and they threw you onto a horse. I saw it happen. I was right there, hiding behind the water trough like a coward. I had a chance to fight. I had a chance to save you. But I was afraid. I thought they'd kill me. So I stayed hidden. I let them take you. Emma's tears were falling freely now, silent and steady, carving tracks through the dirt on her face. Mama tried to follow, Caleb said, his own eyes wet. She ran after the horses, screaming your name. But one of the bandits turned back. He shot her. Just shot her. Like she was nothing. She fell in the dirt, and the cabin burned behind her. And I just watched. He covered his face with his hands, his shoulders shaking. I buried her the next morning, he said, under the old cottonwood tree by the creek. Then I went looking for you. I searched every town, every trading post, every saloon between here and the territories. I asked sheriffs, ranchers, wagon drivers, anyone who might have seen a little girl with dark hair and a burn on her wrist. I searched for 2 years. He lowered his hands and looked at her, his face raw with pain. But I couldn't find you, he said. And after a while, the guilt became too much. I started drinking. I stopped asking questions. I became a drifter, a nobody, a man without a name or a purpose. I told myself you were probably dead, that it was easier to believe than to keep hoping. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. But I never forgot that scar, he said. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it. That crescent moon. That mark of fire. It haunted me. And today, when I saw it on your wrist, I knew. I knew God had given me one more chance. One chance to make things right. Emma stared at him through her tears. She did not speak. She did not move. But something in her eyes had changed. The wall was cracking. Caleb leaned forward, his voice soft and desperate. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, he said. I know I failed you. But I'm here now. And I swear to you, Emma, I will never leave you again. I will protect you. I will give you a life, even if it costs me everything. The fire burned low. The stars watched in silence. Emma reached up and touched her face, feeling the tears there as if surprised by them. Then, slowly, she looked down at her wrist, at the scar, the crescent moon. And for the first time since he had found her, she spoke. Her voice was small and broken, like glass that had shattered long ago. I remember the fire, she whispered. Caleb's heart stopped. I remember Mama, she said. I remember you. The words hung in the air between them, fragile and sacred. Caleb wanted to reach for her, to hold her, but he did not move. He waited. He let her come to him, if she chose to. Emma stood slowly. She stepped toward the fire, toward him, and stopped just a few feet away. She looked at him with eyes that were still afraid, still uncertain, but no longer empty. Why didn't you come sooner? She asked, her voice trembling. I tried, Caleb said, tears streaming down his face. I tried, Emma. I swear I did. She nodded just once. Then she sat down beside the fire, close enough that he could hear her breathing, but far enough that the distance still existed. It was not forgiveness, but it was a beginning. The town appeared on the horizon 3 days later, rising from the dust like a promise that might or might not be kept. It was small, just a main street lined with wooden buildings, a general store, a saloon with faded paint, a church with a crooked steeple. The kind of place where people came to start over or to disappear. Caleb and Emma rode in slowly, the gray mare tired from the long journey. The sun was high and merciless, casting sharp shadows across the street. A few people paused to watch them pass, a shopkeeper sweeping his porch, a rancher loading supplies into a wagon, a group of children playing with a hoop near the water trough. Their eyes lingered on the girl, on her torn dress and bare feet, but no one spoke. Caleb guided the horse toward the church at the end of the street. He had heard about this town from a cowboy he'd met months ago in a mining camp. The man had told him about a widow who lived here, a woman with a heart bigger than the prairie, who took in children no one else wanted. Orphans. Lost souls. The forgotten. He hoped it was true. They stopped in front of the church, and Caleb dismounted. He reached up to help Emma down, and this time she let him. Her feet touched the ground, and she stood there, looking up at the white wooden building with its simple cross and open door. Wait here, Caleb said softly. Emma nodded. She did not ask where he was going. She had learned not to ask questions. Caleb walked up the steps and through the door. Inside, the church was cool and quiet, filled with the smell of old wood and candle wax. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating dust motes that floated like tiny stars. At the front of the room, near the altar, a woman knelt in prayer. She was older, perhaps 50, with gray hair pinned back in a simple bun and a face that had known hardship but not bitterness. She wore a plain black dress, the dress of mourning, though Caleb did not know who she mourned. When she heard his footsteps, she looked up and rose slowly to her feet. "Can I help you?" she asked. Her voice was gentle, the kind of voice that could calm a frightened animal or a broken child. Caleb removed his hat and held it in his hands. "Ma'am," he said, "my name is Caleb Harper. I was told that you'd taken children, orphans." The woman's expression softened. "I do," she said. "My name is Mrs. Abigail Winters. My husband was the sheriff here before he passed. We never had children of our own, so I try to help those who need it." Caleb swallowed hard. "I have a girl outside," he said. "My sister. She's been through a lot. More than any child should. I want to give her a home, a future, but I can't. Not the way I am now. I'm a drifter, ma'am. I got no land, no money, no way to care for her properly." Mrs. Winters studied him carefully. "Where are her parents?" "Dead," Caleb said, his voice rough. "Killed years ago. She's been alone since then. I only just found her." The widow walked toward him, her eyes searching his face. "And you love her?" Caleb's throat tightened. "More than anything," he whispered. Mrs. Winters nodded slowly. "Then you're doing the right thing," she said. "Bring her inside. Let me meet her." Caleb turned and walked back outside. Emma stood exactly where he had left her, her arms wrapped around herself, her eyes scanning the street as if waiting for danger to appear. When she saw him, her shoulders relaxed just a little. "Come on," he said, offering his hand. She hesitated, then took it. Her hand was small and cold in his, but she held on tight. Together, they walked into the church. Mrs. Winters stood waiting near the front pew, her hands folded in front of her. When she saw Emma, her expression shifted, not pity, but understanding. She had seen this before. The hollow eyes, the silence, the scars that lived deeper than skin. "Hello, sweetheart," Mrs. Winters said softly. "My name is Abigail. What's yours?" Emma looked up at Caleb, as if asking permission to speak. He nodded. "Emma," she whispered. "Emma," Mrs. Winters repeated, smiling. "That's a beautiful name. Are you hungry, Emma? I have fresh bread at my house. And a warm bed if you'd like to rest." Emma glanced at Caleb again. He squeezed her hand gently. "It's all right," he said. "Mrs. Winters is a good woman. She'll take care of you." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Are you leaving?" she asked, her voice trembling. Caleb knelt down in front of her, so they were eye to eye. "Not forever," he said. "But I need to go for a while. I need to become the kind of man who deserves to be your brother. The kind of man who can protect you and give you a life worth living. I'm not that man yet. But I will be." Emma shook her head, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "What if you don't come back?" "I will," Caleb said, his voice firm. "I promise you, Emma. I will come back. And when I do, I'll be someone you can be proud of." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver locket. It had belonged to their mother, the only thing he had saved from the fire. He opened it, revealing a faded photograph inside, a woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. "This was Mama's," he said, placing it in Emma's hand. "I want you to have it, so you remember where you came from, and so you know I'll always come back to you." Emma stared at the locket, her fingers closing around it. Then, slowly, she looked up at Caleb, and before he could say anything else, she reached out and wrapped her arms around his neck, holding him tight. Caleb froze. Then he wrapped his arms around her and held her close, his eyes squeezed shut, his heart breaking and healing all at once. "I'm sorry," he whispered into her hair. "I'm so sorry, Emma, for everything." She did not answer, but she held him tighter, and that was enough. When they finally pulled apart, Emma wiped her eyes and looked at Mrs. Winters. The widow stepped forward and gently took Emma's hand. "Come with me, dear," she said. "Let's get you cleaned up and fed. You're safe now." Emma nodded. She looked back at Caleb one last time, and he saw something in her eyes that had not been there before. Not quite forgiveness, but something close. Trust, maybe. Or hope. He stood and put his hat back on. He walked to the door, then paused and turned back. "Thank you," he said to Mrs. Winters, "for giving her a chance." The widow smiled. "We all deserve a chance, Mr. Harper. Even those who think they don't." Caleb nodded and walked out into the sunlight. He climbed onto his horse and sat there for a moment, looking back at the church. Through the window, he could see Emma standing beside Mrs. Winters, the locket still clutched in her hand. He touched the brim of his hat in a silent goodbye, then turned the horse toward the open road. The sun was beginning its descent, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The desert stretched out before him, vast and unforgiving, but also full of possibility. He had no plan, no destination, only a promise to keep. He would find work. He would save money. He would build something worth coming back to. And when he was ready, when he was the man Emma deserved, he would return. The scar on her wrist would always be there, a reminder of the night they lost everything. But it was also a reminder that they had found each other again. That blood was stronger than fire. That family was not lost until it was forgotten. And Caleb Harper would never forget. He rode into the setting sun, alone but not empty, carrying with him the weight of his past and the fragile, precious hope of redemption. Behind him, in the small church at the edge of a forgotten town, a girl with a crescent-shaped scar held a locket to her chest and whispered a single word into the silence. "Brother."